The Salt Lake Tribune comes out and says that Homeland Security should be used to detain and enforce vaccinations on those that choose not to be vaccinated. And then the legislature introduces and unanimously passes in the House legislation that just might allow that to happen. On today's Defending Utah television, I'm Ben McClintock from defendingutah.org. Make sure and share this video with all of your friends and all of your contacts, and information on how to contact your legislator will be in the description of this video, as well as on the article version of this on defendingutah.org. Make sure you don't miss any future videos by clicking on the subscribe button and clicking that bell. Also become a part of the solution by going to defendingutah.org and clicking on the join tab and becoming a member today. So if you weren't aware, the Salt Lake Tribune editorial department issued a opinion piece, an official opinion of the Salt Lake Tribune. We'll share that article with you. Utah leaders have surrendered to COVID pandemic, the editorial board writes. So this was on January 16th. And it just goes through and says it's, all the things that they're refusing to address and refusing to do all the things that California and New York are doing is just horrible. And then as this piece finishes up, it says, were Utah a truly civilized place, the governor's next move would be to find a way to mandate the kind of mass vaccination campaign we should have launched a year ago, going as far as to deploy the National Guard to ensure that people without proof of vaccination would not be allowed, anywhere. The Salt Lake Tribune says that the National Guard should be deployed to make sure if you're not vaccinated, you're not allowed to leave your house. And this is being condemned at all levels, but maybe not the legislature. Let's go to HB16, Emergency Response Amendments. Representative James Dunnigan in the House is the sponsor, and Buckshot Caucus member Mike McKell is the Senate sponsor. And right now, it just passed the Senate, the House of Representatives, but this early in the session. This is unprecedented, which is one of the most worrying parts of this, is most bills have to go through a committee hearing, right? So the public can testify on this, but they bypassed that completely and went straight to the floor of the House, and it was voted unanimously. No, nobody voted no. We had two people, Wilcox and Snow, that didn't bother to show up to vote and be responsible. But every single other member of the House of Representatives, even those supporting supposedly that say they support the Constitution, voted yes on this bill. Okay, so what does this bill say? It's not very long. It's pretty easy to actually go through. Again, it's HB16. I'll put the link in the description. And we'll go to the highlighted provision, which, isn't always accurate. It modifies provisions related to the state disaster recovery restricted unit account, and provides that the Division of Emergency Management may enter into an agreement with an entity to operate an emergency response team. Describes the purposes for which an emergency response team member is considered employee of the division, and makes technical changes. So you'll see here, nothing's underlined, nothing's struck out. So this is all current code. Except for that it raises the amount of money here. It says that they go from $150,000 budget to a $500,000 budget. Again here, 10 million now to 5 million. So that's kind of interesting that it went, their minimum balance went down, but their budget went up. And here we go to definitions. What's an emergency response team? This is new. So they're declaring these new emergency response teams that have been used elsewhere, similar to what's going on in Australia. It means a group of emergency responders. Remember this in 2015. I just want to kind of pause for a second and lay the foundation, because in 2015, the legislature, again, unanimously gave the governor the ability, illegally, I might add, the ability to declare an emergency and take complete control over the state. There was this power that was given to him in 2010 that allowed him to shut down churches, allowed him to shut down businesses, allowed all of the things that they were, the mask mandates, and that now the different things that they're wanting, like the Tribune wants to do, is to do the vaccine mandates. That was all done 5 years previous. So let's say, maybe they don't do anything in 2022. How about 2027? How about 2024? These things don't always happen immediately. We need to understand what power is being given, right? And so we see the same thing that happened with the emergency powers that were given to the governor in 2015 and how they were used in 2020. Do we want to create the same scenario again with so-called emergency response teams? Okay, so let's go back to the bill. And emergency response teams and placed a direction, control, and funding of the division in accordance with an agreement between the division and a sponsoring agency. Okay, in response to or anticipation, they only have to. They think that they're psychic. They have to. If they anticipate a disaster, an emergency, or special security event, right? They found that they thought that the fake pandemic, they claimed that the fake pandemic was an emergency, which gave them the power to be able to tell you're not allowed to go to church anymore. You're not allowed to meet at the park. You're not allowed to eat at a restaurant. And so if they even believe that an emergency, like a fake emergency like that might happen, then they can put in the emergency response teams. Okay. And then it describes who a member of that emergency response team is, and acting within the course of the scope of their duties for an emergency response team. Sponsoring agency means an entity that executes a memorandum of understanding with the United States Department of Homeland Security to organize a national urban search and rescue response system task force. Okay, so this agency is the emergency response team is to work with, right? They're working with Homeland Security for search and rescue. Homeland Security doesn't get involved in search and rescue unless it's something that is, declared a threat to national security. Why is the state of Utah working with Homeland Security to set up emergency response teams to search our cities for what? What are they searching for? Is it what the Tribune has told them to search for? It's very vague. It's not telling us any additional information, which is another big problem because, broad legislation gives broad powers. Do we want to give broad powers, or we don't want to give, unelected, we don't want to give executive branch legislative authority. That's illegal. We don't want to give unelected bureaucrats, random citizens like Angela Dunn, the ability to send out these emergency response teams, do we? Emergency response team agreement, the creation, the division may enter into an agreement with a sponsoring agency to establish terms and conditions that apply to the team. If the division enters into an agreement described, the agreement shall allow the division to reimburse them, so for funding operations. An emergency response team member is considered a division employee only for the following purposes: receiving workers' comp, which shall be remedied, blah, 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 for their injuries. So, if they invade somebody's house and try to kidnap them or arrest them and send them into concentration camp because they don't get the vaccine, they might get injured. Operating a motor vehicle or equipment if the emergency response team member is properly licensed and authorized to do so. Receiving the protection and indemnification normally afforded a division employee. Very short language in the bill. We wanted to have Dr. Bradley on. He's doing much better. Want to let you know that he's doing much better. We're going to be recording another program with him, but I wanted to get this out because of how fast this is going. Didn't really have time to be able to get together to do this overview with him, but him and I, Dr. Bradley and I, went through the bill and we agreed that there's a lot of issues with this, especially what we see going on. But the problem is, and which is why I'm not being more bold in what the bill is saying, and I'm asking lots of questions. Why is the legislature unanimously voting to do the same thing that they did before, give broad powers, completely unspecific powers to work with and fund Homeland Security in searching our streets without saying what they're searching for? It's an emergency. Or an emergency that they think, because of their psychic powers, might be coming up soon. We're giving them this ability and this power right now. Completely unanimous, bypassing the committee process, is now going to the Senate. Is the Senate going to bypass committee and not let anybody voice their views on this? Is it just going to go to the floor and just be a rubber stamp and saying, you know what, we're going to give this new emergency response team in conjunction with Homeland Security the ability to militarize our streets? Is that what we want to do? Make sure we're going to be, again, putting the links in the description on how to read the bill for yourself. Read the bill, decide for yourself. We showed it there on the screen. And then also how to contact your legislators. Let them know that this is pretty serious and that, whatever it is that they intend, because their intentions, which is what normally, if they're caught on something, they say, well, we didn't intend to do that. Their intentions are irrelevant, because what the law, what these emergency response teams and judges will go by is, what is the language of the bill, not what random legislators thought it meant. That's what you think it meant. What your intentions are irrelevant. And we need to just focus on the language of the bill and the issues that arise from it. And so if they say that, we'll say, well, be specific. What emergency powers? To whom are we giving these emergency powers? How are these to be used? What's the psychic emergency that we're imagining will happen, that we need to militarize our streets with these emergency response teams? Is this implementing the Salt Lake Tribune's dream? Too vague to be able to say yes or no, which is the problem. Share this video, subscribe to this channel, click on that bell to be notified for future videos, because this is the legislative session meeting until mid-March, and we need to be able to update you on legislation that is either a threat to us or is actually maybe going on the offense to restore freedom. We want to let you know either way. Also, help support our program, help us support our efforts, become a part of the solution by going to defendingutah.org, click on that join button and become a member today. See you next time. I'm Ben McClintock.